podcast. We're your hosts, Stephen Tyler, Landis, son of Lawrence. We are going to keep it moving with the actual show today, which is about herd immunity. Herd immunity. Probably been hearing that a lot about that on the news because we are in what I consider a plague. We are in the COVID-19 distribution phase of different strands and variants and mutations. So herd immunity becomes a big factor. And also we have a sociological dimension that we decided to add to it. Right. We're going to discuss that. Stephen?
Well, the idea of herd immunity, we think about it in terms of the virus and how, in literal terms. But in order for us to really be able to move beyond where we are now, there has to be some herd immunity when it comes to inoculating against really devastatingly dangerous ideas. One of the things that you saw over the course of the whole pandemic was you saw there were different buzzwords, different terms that were used to help people, to help us cope. One of which was social distancing, right? And the idea of social distancing is staying 6 feet away from people, wearing your mask, don't hug, don't touch. Well, there's a byproduct. There's a spiritual byproduct to all of it. So, social distancing, it leaves us with a sense of detachment. So, we have people who are literally not living in reality at this point because, the idea of not being able to come out, not being able to commune with each other, not being able to talk to one another, not being able to do those things that make us human. It dehumanizes us in such a way. And it did in the beginning. And I don't know if you remember, Landis, but Lawrence, when the pandemic first hit, school was still going on. So we had people who couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't send their kids anywhere. They were stuck in the house with them. So eventually, folks started coming outside. The weather was good. Folks were walking. I remember living in the Greater Third Ward area. And people were going walking down trails in the morning and the afternoon. Families were out riding bikes. It was great. So, a sense of detachment. Go ahead.
Well, the herd immunity, like I said, is most we're hearing about it on TV is biologically, are we going to be able to beat a disease? It is a resistance to the spread of an infectious disease within a population that is based on pre-existing immunity of a higher proportion of individuals as a result of previous infection or vaccination.
See, I think we're missing that. Because we talk about to already have some sort of existing immunity. Mm-hmm. We're not immune to bad ideas. In fact, what's been happening is, and you can attest to this, over the last 50 years, 30 years, 40 years, our immunity spiritually and psychologically to ideas that could sever, destroy us, all that, those things have been broken down. Mm-hmm. So through our media, right? Mm-hmm. Through our politicians, the messages, policies, education system, it's been a slow, corrosive wearing away of the fabric of really what it means to be human. So when we talk about herd immunity, we're not just we're looking at this virus and we're thinking about that, but really, man, we got to start thinking about the fact that we are sick. Our society's sick.
That's the war. Where I think we're that's what this podcast is about, is to shed light on the actual plight of the victim right here. You're at war. When something takes over you, it's trying to take over your system, turn the system against itself. So maybe we don't understand the vast enemy. Maybe we don't understand the formation that's being mounted against us. Maybe we don't understand the assault. Maybe because you see some things happening on the ground, you don't see the air attack. Maybe because you see some things happening in one part of food, you don't see the water attack. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think that's what it is seeing, look, we're being encroached through land, air, and sea, right? So let's look at the whole vast thing lest we miss something and still are open for attack. when we think we're protecting ourselves.
And you familiar with symbolic interaction, right? The idea that things that happen, things that happen in the world have a much larger meaning elsewhere, like much larger implications. So, for example, we're looking at a virus, right? We're looking at an actual virus that will come in and affect the body, but that virus really has some symbolism in the fact that the virus could be representative of all the falsehoods and disinformation that's out there and how it has infiltrated and taken root in us, in our minds. I mean, we literally had people who were so gassed up a month ago that they wouldn't attack the Capitol because they felt like they had been wrong. Well, what have they been watching? What have they been listening to? What have they been fed? Right? We have campaigns and protests over the last year that were fueled by what people saw on the news. Right? It's again the disinformation, the ideas that are not true. Those things, I think, are what we need to guard against. And
how do we filter from that? Because, once again, I have no problem saying the media is what? The most effective devil in America. So if you have Worm Tongue that can't be shut up, has his own platform, pretty much the only thing you can do is up your filtration system or train people.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Landon. All right. So, how do you inoculate against bad ideas, right? The essential question is, how do you guard against falsehoods? And how do we develop a real herd immunity when it comes to our spirits, right? And our minds? Because all this is confusion. And all this confusion that we live in is actually the byproduct of postmodernist thinking, right? The idea that there's not one truth, there's many truths. Well, if there's many truths, that means everybody can be right. If everybody can be right, then damn it, somebody's lying. And what we're living in right now is a world where there is no singular worldview. There's no one way to do anything, right?
Then there's a war against real information. There's a misinformation that is doing the oppositional forces, because we're in a war. We're in an information war. Data is where it's at. Quantum informational sciences is what is the race between China, Russia, and America is about who can get artificial intelligence popping. And once again, we always bring that up. That's not even controlling information. That's controlling your decisions, or at least calculating your decisions, your movements, and you're basically modifying your behavior or monitoring your behavior to where they can stop it or divert it when they want to. So if you look at the war, it's almost a time-space continuum war with predictions, modifications, trying to stop you and modify your behavior and trying to curve you off when they feel like it, because they're looking at every video and every YouTube and every Google page that you're going to. They're looking at your algorithms of your diet and your decisions and your behavior. So it's almost like, once again, we can leave the earth, but we're not still leaving the military-industrial complex. And that's why I want to thank our guest, Patient Zero, Lawrence Clemens III, for coming out here, because when you're looking at cryptocurrency, for instance, I was going to ask him one of the questions, but it wasn't such a rapid question and answer. But I was going to ask him, what do you think? Do you think cryptocurrency could be hijacked by artificial intelligence and used as a control system? You know, to kind of find out everything, link everything up, shut down who you want to shut down. You see what I'm saying? Meet people at the pass. So I don't know, what I'm basically trying to say is the war, the manipulation, the chess move that we find, the chessboard in the matrix that we find ourselves on is a binary matrix. If you think you're from God, or you feel like you have some sort of presence or consciousness about you, then you're probably what we call a trinary spirit. That means you are not going to be predictable. You are not going to be controlled. There was always going to be a struggle for you, because even while you're being manipulated and even while you're being herded and programmed, there's a consciousness about you that kind of picks up to that. It catches up to that. Right. And you realize, damn, I am actually routinely I am robotic. Punked. And you could pull yourself out of that. That's that third part of you that's not completely enslaved by the matrix, that we have the ability through this platform and through this podcast to affect and inspire, and thus in living and kind of empower to make more decisions, to be more in control of your command center, instead of having your command center hijacked by what we're speaking of.
Well, and again, we're talking about how to develop a herd immunity. The first thing we have to do is recognize truth. Like, what is the truth? And after recognizing the truth, we have to inoculate ourselves against the falsehoods. Inoculate, obviously, when we're talking about viruses, we're talking about the idea of introducing something to the body that could be harmful with the intent of the body building immunities to it. So I think what's dangerous, especially in the society that we live in now, is just that people don't want to be wrong. And because people don't want to be wrong, it's an issue. It's an issue anytime that's challenged. So there's a narrative or a meta narrative. There's a meta narrative for everything. There's a reason. There's a reason to justify anything because our facts are not there. And when you talk about data, everything's data driven. But what do you do? What is data? What good is data to a person that can't read it? We are dumbing down. We're dumbing down the expectations, right? And because dumbing down the expectations, when someone sees a graph in front of them or some numbers or a chart or a poll, they automatically think it's true. So inoculating against bad ideas is literally taking in a falsehood, but being able to compare it to a standard. What is true? What is noble, right? What's good? What's worthy of praise? What's worthy of actually meditating on and studying? And when we turn our minds to the truth, then everything else falls in place.
Wow, that's funny because I couldn't help but think about how the Illuminati, when we first started, when that started becoming hot in 99, 2000, people started researching it, how we started realizing that the very value of gold is manipulatable. Mm-hmm. The very value of our dollar is manipulatable, and people think it has some beautiful sacred science that goes down to it, when it's really just power and manipulation. So yeah. I think powerful people can understand how systems work, and so they're not scrounging for dollars and looking for profits. They're looking for control. Mm-hmm. So when they understand that we're not going to be fighting for every transaction, we just want to know what your value system is. We'll hijack that value system. Right. So in this cultural Marxism that you see taking over, the long walk through the institutions, they understand. If I could become a doctor, I could hijack people's morals a little bit more. If I become a judge, if I become a lawyer, if I become a chief executive officer, people are just going to give me their power a lot of times just because I'm the preacher, just because I'm the president, just because I'm at the front of the room. So if we rise to power, we can pretty much, if we get our evil people and our wicked people in places of power, percentage-wise, we could probably sway enough people to just go with us. Just because we are our power, we are established, and we are somebody that you can look up to. Right. And other people are going to fight, but it's not going to be enough people to fight on a moral and ethical level to where we're going to fight for the control of values. I can shift your values if I get enough people in a position of power, and over the years, we'll just tell you what's desirable. Don't worry about all that if it's right or not. Trust us. So I do see that. As we're shifting into so much information and air, as we're shifting into the paradigm of ether, you should know better. It's accessible. It's the fact that you have been socially engineered to be apathetic. You've been socially engineered to be an animal instead of a being of spiritual enlightenment. So you're not looking for the light. You're not looking for the truth. Basically, the value in the premium that is put on truth has been diluted through this attack on the herd. Right. Systematically. And it ain't start with Bill Gates and Project 201 as a eugenicist and his vaccination patent up to COVID-19 after he was the only billionaire to put together Project 201, which is a project that simulated what if there was a disease that took over the whole world and there was a breakout that shut down the governments, and so he does that like 10 months before COVID, and then 6 months after COVID he has the vaccine. But let's just say that was all just coincidence. There's still an issue of how do we get herd immunity? How do we dilute infectious diseases, bad thoughts? Because those things are actually what brings on illness is the bad vibrations and the bad frequencies to the body, whether it's based on fear and stress, which is really closely related. But they understand, people who understand power understand systems, and they understand inoculation, they understand infestation, infection. So they're pushing the fear in you, they're pushing the stress in you. You have to understand that this creates the illness. And if you want to help people, how do we, as a warriors, as defenders, right? How do we fight the true cause? Do we just yell at people and try to over-convince them, or do we go against certain streams of incoming attacks?
You first inoculate against a bad idea. Mm-hmm. So you go out there and find out what the falsehoods are. Mm-hmm. What's not true. What is it that's being said? Because a lot of times the problem with us, especially as Christians, we don't even know what's out there. We don't even know what's going on in the world. So we're blindsided by these ideas, and that's how you have 82% of evangelicals supporting, right wing nut jobs, mm-hmm. right? You have that because at the end of the day, we're not well read. We're mm-hmm. not well read. We're not well studied. We don't want to know. We don't. And that's the thing, is that we went from not being well read to not even wanting to know.
Wait a minute, you made it sound like the values have already been shifted. You made it seem like the premiums and the focus on what values are important have already been infiltrated and shifted.
They have.
So you don't even know where to shift them back to, because it was a double move when you thought it was a single move.
Well, I think values. I think we're post-Christian, so right, that's one value that's gone, right? So the ideas that stem from Christianity, like the nuclear family, or a faith, mm-hmm. Being able, caring for the poor, caring for the less fortunate. Mm-hmm. Those ideas go away when you basically X out that belief system, or better yet, your culture doesn't derive or grow out of it. Now the culture is growing out of the multi-pluralism, which again, you're not going to get a Bible in everybody's hand.
I mean, because on Proverbs it tells you to, let's just see Proverbs 82, right? Mm-hmm. Oops, I'm sorry. Psalms 82. If you go to Psalms 82, it tells you, even, before the Christianity, even on the Hebrew tip, even on the Solomonic tip, hey, there's a way that we do things. I'd say... Well, actually, I'm gonna just read the whole psalm, because that actually does kind of summarize it.
Okay.
God standeth in the congregation of the mighty; he judgeth among the gods. How long will ye judge unjustly, and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. I believe that is like a Marvel comic introduction to what this podcast is about. The word gods is a guide, especially in a little g. Okay, we're not we're not the creator God, but we are created by God, which means we have the godlike creativity quality in us, and we are guides because we do show the way with the enlightenment that we get and deem and gleam and inspire, right? So when he says that everybody walks in darkness and everybody is off course, it's just that Mordorism, that darkness is always, once again, it's the same binding of the rings into the darkness, into the deception, into the confusion. Right. So we're literally guiding people out of the dark universe or dark existence, simulation, or whatever you want to call it. And that does take like how do you explain the quantum physics of, no, you don't. You just have to find a more genius way of breaking it down.
Right.
You have to find you have to be almost motivated or inspired with like divine wisdom. You know what I'm saying? To be inspired to kind of break it down to people.
Yeah.
So we're trying our best, but that's basically what the herd immunity conversation is about.
Right.
Yeah.
Recognizing bad ideas and learning how to inoculate yourself against them. Learning how to take in those bad ideas, but then develop defenses for them. Develop antibodies for them. I mean, you know, and also too healthy habits. Right. The first thing I'm doing when I'm getting up every morning is checking Facebook, and that's not a healthy habit. Or better yet, you know, I think that the danger, and you mentioned this at the beginning of our show tonight, is the media. The media's gone from providing objective information to actually telling you what you want to hear, so for ratings. And they sold that out a long time ago, 40, 50 years ago. So we have a challenge before us now is we have to go read our media. We have to read our news, right? We have to go to alternative news sources. And then on top of that, hell, you got fact check. So, like, if one channel says this, the other channel says something totally different, then you may have that incongruence may mean one of them is mainstream and one of them is not.
But if I don't like you and I understand how people are, I can leverage them against you. When it's time to take people down, when it's time to shut people up, people don't use facts. They use the power of the word, and dishing out gossip is actually still strong and effective. Just saying Michael Jackson rapes children without having any claims, without having any evidence is enough to mar him as you're killing him or as he's dying, you know. But telling somebody, you know, just saying, hey, this person sexually abused kids, you know, even if you're a man and you've never even been involved in anything, it just puts a negative spin on it because people are so quick to, we're in a touch and go society. So then nobody cares. They just care about what they hear. So if you have the platform, then you have the power. So you're going to need some sort of extra force, some sort of extra inspiration to get to swim upstream whenever you're being targeted. If you are a targeted individual, no matter where you go, you have this war against you, this target on your back. And it gets supernatural and malevolent. But you do have to show some sort of graduation, some sort of matriculation progress. Right. That's the only thing that makes people back up is the fact that they understand that you're ready, you're experienced, you're seasoned, and you're gonna survive through it. You know, I just feel like the more enlightened you get, the heavier the attacks against you, and the heavier the resistance against you, because they understand that you were ready to bring light to the world, that you were ready to bring your message. And just like any messenger, just like any angel of light, you will have with resistance in the demonic realm. Right. So we're highly electronic right now. We're highly technological, so we're highly demonic. We're highly open to demonic frequencies. Right. So that's another good thing. I would say one of the biggest things for this show, understanding that with all this technology and with all these electronics comes a lot of demonic interference, a lot of malevolent, interdimensional opposition and stress. And if you are a fighter and a warrior and a messenger of light, if you are an ambassador, then you are opening yourself up with every screen, with every electronic circuit, in every environment. You are just as open. You're opening the portals up. So you want to seal yourself, protect yourself, and be conscious of the portals that we're opening up with the electronic world that we're living in. But there is a bigger agenda. If you've ever heard of the 2030 agenda, it is an agenda that a lot of people are talking about on the internet space about food control, about Bill Gates once again buying up. He's the biggest owner of farmland in America right now. Just bought up hundreds of thousands of acres worth of farmland. It's an agenda for no private property. No private property. It's an overall. So if you hear about the smart cities and the mega cities and all that stuff, and we're talking about a heavy depopulation. So the herd will be getting thinned out regardless.
400,000 so far.
So we're talking about post survival, post apocalyptic survival thinking.
But you hear that the new normal, quote unquote, is not going to start until 2019. But look around.
2021, 2022.
2019, sorry, 2021. Or 2024 actually. The new normal. That's what they said. The new normal will be normal around 2024. But in reality, it's not. It's not gonna be a new normal. It's just that the stuff we're doing is gonna become normalized, right? So at some point, yeah, it'll become normal because I'm used to wearing masks. I'm used to doing this. I'm used to doing this. I'm used to sitting this far apart from you. I'm used to taking my shoes off when I get home. Those kind of things. But as we make that transition and that progression physically into the unknown, we need to do the same thing on a spiritual level. Start understanding, like, man, okay, these are my triggers. This is how I'm not pleasing God. What can I do? How can I grow? You know what I'm saying? How can I grow past this situation? Because most of us got left holding some kind of bag after the last year. I mean, be it saddled with debt or sickness or something.
I don't know if you've been familiar with Second Esdras in the Apocrypha, Second Esdras, which is Ezra, Ezra.
Yeah,
and then they have an Esdras. Well, in that one, the Second Esdras, he talks about like the souls at the end, like what happens to the spirits, and he says this is like 7 days of greatness if you know that you're going to heaven, and it's 7 days of like craziness if you know you're going to hell. And it was kind of like there is a paradise period where people kind of know where they're going, you know what I'm saying? But they're getting to see a full case of why and what they've done in their lives. And that's kind of like what this year has been, is almost things are like talking to you and showing you with a lot of amplification and magnification of what your issues are, where your holdups are. And it was meant for you to kind of get by yourself and do your own inventory. And that's what you kind of notice emotionally. We are at a point where it's like, if you halfway get it energetically, it's get your shit together. Assess yourselves, and it's given. It's literally divinely like, nope, get out their face.
Right.
Get back to your stuff. Look at your children in the face. Look at all your problems. Look at your spouse. Look at all your problems. Look at your life. Look, ain't nothing else you can really do but get it right. And that is kind of like, you can see the demons also encouraged because the homicide goes up, everything goes up, so you can see the demons kind of taking advantage of all that. But that's where we want to get it. That's where we want everybody to think about right now, is we're being encumbered by visitors and a bunch of negative intrusions. But that in itself is a learning point to let you know that it's time for that.
Right.
Because if you get your stuff together, you'll be out of that and ascended from that, while that is meant to take away who it's meant to take away.
Right.
So the negativity that's coming through the universe and coming on the planet is natural to come through, because if you open up a portal, the good stuff's going to come through, the bad stuff's going to come through. But if you know bad stuff's going to come through, you want yourself at a certain position to where you're above the flooding and you're above the washing away and the cleaning process. Just like the Passover coming up. It's the same thing. It's,
right.
Yeah, I'm coming to kill. Yeah, I'm coming to clean up some stuff. But this is what you do to not get in the way. And this is what we basically trying to show people how to do. Everybody's been telling you for years on this internet. They ain't got nothing to do with the Bible. They've all been telling you to do. You know what? There's a big portal coming up. It's going to be 2020. It's going to be 2019, 2024. There's going to be a big opening. There's going to be a big paradigm shift. There's going to be a big change. Now, just because the media is talking about new normal don't mean nothing. People been knowing about this at a bigger level for so long. It's about time you catch up. This is time for inventory, self-inventory, self-accountability, spiritual assessments. Understand that the air, the ether, the technology, everything that we put in our systems is programmable to either help you or hurt you. Now be accountable for it. Be mindful.
Take your meds.
Take your meds.
Take your meds. I mean, here's the thing. And we talk about being accountable, being mindful. That's part of the process. When you know you're sick and you want to get well, you take ownership of that process. You take ownership, take responsibility, and say, look, all right, I know that I'm walking around here and I'm literally like oozing out all this poison, this toxin that I've been hearing and reading and seeing all day long. So I gotta take my meds. I gotta put something in there. Something in there that is going to, like you said, cancel out the negative messages that I've been getting. And I mean, it's definitely been a lot of doom and gloom lately. And most of the things that we can use to help cancel out the negativity and the noise, they're not going to be provided by mass media. It's a walk in the park. You know, it's going outside on a sunny day. It's meditating and praying. It's spending time with family. It's going for a run. It's working out. Those are things that are going to help. You know, as far as the actual messages themselves, any message that strips away the dignity of another human being is a false message. Because in Imago Dei, we're all made in God's image. So the man who's made in God's image is going to treat others the way God would treat others.
It's going to get that sunlight into its melanin to get that pure love, energy, information as well. That genetic information is being talked to. The melanin is a neuron, so you can't tell me there ain't no information in sunlight. When the sunlight, when there's little suns that match the cellular information of the sun inside each neuron cell in your melanin. So if you have a little microcosm of something that you are getting energy from, and it is super huge, or you can call it a macrocosm, and you got a little version of that little nigga inside you. Sorry, every show I have to be ghetto, but it's common sense, and that's what I want people to think about. If you think about what we're thinking about, you're like, man, I gotta know all this stuff. No, you don't. You have to understand and appreciate it. The people have done all the work and told you that all this stuff is the Fibonacci sequence. Our hair, our skin, if they're our fingerprints, if they've been telling you, we don't have to go back and do everything they're doing, but we could take their word for it, and we could take our word for it that there is a signature in the universe from all creation, that it goes back to one creator. Why do you have to be a genius, or do you have to fall in line and understand, hey, if I want to know what's false, why don't I look at nature and see if anything that doesn't fall into that pattern of natural creation is not created by my creator? It has a very good chance to be false. It has a very good chance to have flaws, because it is what? Synthetic. Right. And that synthetic progression is what we found out was where all the diseases come from. It's like we find out that where these viruses come from ain't real. Off-world, with these bacteria, fungi. We found out that the COVID-19 is actually synthetic. So we know we're naturally created, and we're finding things that are synthetic in our systems. We shouldn't be surprised that it's causing illness and disease.
Right. So inoculate against bad ideas, recognize the truth, and walk in it. Make it a practice to seek out truth. You know, cross-reference what you're hearing, cross-reference what you're reading. But if you want to develop herd immunity, we have to become immune to not only the virus and the vaccine, not only the virus, but we have to become immune to the idea of fear and hatred that separate us. You know, that's got to go.
Energetically, it's going to keep you down. Energetically, it's going to keep you stagnated, and it's going to keep you from right. I'm going to go ahead and prophetically just throw it out there again. Our planet is going under an upgrade, an energy. In the words of Dr. Delbert Blair, we're going from the third dimension to the fifth dimension. This is going to take, you're going to have to be more of a light body. You're not going to be able to carry your heavy feelings and your heavy sentiment. You're not going to be able to carry resentment, anger, hatred, and all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to get that out of you. And the only way to get that out of you is actually is to get more light in your body. So that's the scripture as well. Something about the light, it purifies the impurities out, because impurities are just junk, corrosion, and things that are toxic. The light purifies with the heat and the brilliance, right? Eating more food that is alive and not dead. Dead food, flesh, and food that is synthetic, once again, it leaves residue. So we do have to clean up our diets and our spiritual diets.
Right.
You know?
I agree. So, I mean, we're looking at the prospect of having high school students, and well, we're looking at this process, but ultimately, what we really want to start doing is guarding our minds. There's nothing else. Guard your mind. Guard your heart.
Proverbs chapter 4
And 23.
and 23.
Guard your heart, for out of it come the issues of life. It actually says, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it stream the issues of life.
That's where it's important right there. That's the actual, that's the key word. With all diligence.
Right.
That means it's so important that nothing gets through, that you don't have, if you were a bouncer at a club and you guarded that door with all diligence, that means you never let nobody get through that wasn't supposed to get through. In real life, people get through all the time. Good looking girls, people who got extra cash, thugs. But with your heart, because it holds emotions and urges and feelings as well as has a very strong production output of energy, it's so important as your generator that if something gets to it, it's going to circulate through your system. So you definitely want to guard that, because that's your major intake for your circulation system. So once again, war movies, crazy movies, cool movies, people who always, the heist movies, people who know how systems work always infiltrate the system, or they'll poison the system, or they'll put something in the circulation and wait for it to cause a problem. That will be a diversion for them to gain entry into said system. So it all works the same. You don't have to be super smart. You just kind of got to see the game and see how things function and work. You know what I'm saying? So we're watching all intake valves. We're watching our eyes, our ears, right? Our mouths, our noses, anywhere where messages or sensations or suggestions can get in through our subconscious, through our conscious, and through just our atmosphere, our everyday atmosphere. How crazy are we? How crazy are we gonna let the elements around us get before we we gotta make decisions. Whether we gotta move to another house, chill around different friends, go to different venues to keep those elements from rubbing off on us. Understanding that we can think we're strong as we are, but we're built as social beings. So being around bad elements will rub off on you. Being around negative people, argumentative people, depressed and always spreading the misery, it will rub off on you naturally. So being diligent means to be on guard and monitor your environment as well.
Guys. Yes. So as you start 2021, be very mindful of the fact that if you got peace, protect it. Protect it with all your heart. Fight for your peace. Fight for your peace of mind. Fight to make sure that you are getting truth put before you each day. Fight to love the people around you, and fight to be all that God created you to be, all that you're supposed to be. There's a lot of reasons to fight right now, a lot of reasons to be angry, but ultimately, what we're really looking at is, why are we here? Who are we? Why are we here? And what are we doing? And we can't answer that question if we're living in falsehood. Can't answer that question if everything that comes out of my mouth or everything that I believe or say stem from a post.
Right. Balance, man. Wholeness and balance comes from observing a peace frequency. And it's as simple as lining up a scanner on the back of a card. Like if you want to scan a credit card on your phone, you have to line up perfectly with that scanner in frame, whether it's the angle or the gradient or how much light you're putting on it. You have to show the full dimension. You have to show the full face. You have to line up your shoulders and your face to what is right, so you can feel the resonance of truth come through you, so you can experience that wholeness and that balance. Once you understand how that feels and how your world responds around you when you're on point, you'll always know when you're not on point. So that's very important. It's finding the alignment of wholeness, balance, truth.
And make sure that your actions and your thoughts are congruent. Right? Make sure that what you intend to do versus what you do is congruent. That you're keeping promises to yourself. That's the beginning of lies, is when we lie to ourselves first. And that's the most dangerous kind of lie, because that's the hardest one to come back from. So start living in truth, walking in truth, dwelling in truth. And I guarantee you'll see a big difference. You will see a difference in how life plays out for you.
Proverbs 16 verse 3. Now I could attest for that, because through that I come from a lot of doubt and darkness and confusion, dark night of the soul, and then came out to where it's like, oh, it all works out. Mm-hmm. I can see how it all works out now. Proverbs chapter 16 verse 3. Commit thy works unto the Lord,
and he will establish it.
And thy thoughts shall be established in the Lord. Yeah, that's right. So if you line up to if you think truth is important, you'll find truth. If you think what to tell people and how to get your family right, how to get your people right, how to find, if you really I want a platform to get everybody calibrated to truth, so if they wanted to survive, they could.
Right.
Then God will give you that. But eventually you got to get everything right for the right reasons first. Like, you got to try to find this stuff and get this stuff together for the right reasons, not for vain reasons. And then it'll come across. Because I've always wanted something just like this going on. Didn't know how to really do it without just paying people and finding people. I wanted people who were really about it. But it took time. It took certain experiences and certain things that happen in the world where everybody's like, yeah, you're right. We should probably do this. So timing isn't. That timing is on the universe. It's on God. It ain't on you. You should have the right heart and the right pure intentions, right?
Just go plant the seed.
Plant the seed.
Let God do everything else. Let everything else happen the way it's supposed to.
Indeed. And this pretty much, I guess,
we had a
covers
discussion tonight.
Good discussion.
Want to encourage you. Wrote a book this year. Part of my cleansing process was writing this book. It was entitled "It Is Not for Kings." It's available on Amazon. It is a life-changing book. I don't say it just because I wrote it, but I say it because this is what people who are reading it are saying. So, It Is Not for Kings on Amazon.com. Again, if we want to talk about inoculation and putting good things in our minds, start with what we're reading, start with what we're watching, and also finish with your conversation, and finish with your actions, and finish with the life that you live.
Well, guys, until next time. Be the change in the world that you want to see. How about that, huh?
I can dig that. All right. Everybody have a good night, good week, and we will see you again. Check us out.
That's only on PRP, Project Restoration Podcast.